to another Monday session. My name is Maureen Chiana, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Mindsight Academy, the host on Lead to Excel podcast, and founder of Mindsight Women's Network. It's a pleasure to be back again with another Monday live session. This session I deliver to ladies in the Mindsight Women's Network. Every Monday I go live, and those that turn up, we end up having a fantastic coaching session, discussion at the end on the topic. So if you want to know more about the network, I'm going to leave a link in the description, and you're more than welcome to join us. It's a fantastic network where we use scripture and science to understand how to live our best lives, to thrive instead of striving. So today, I'm going to be talking about emotions, because that's really the core of the academy, understanding emotional intelligence and how it applies to our life and how we can make the most of it, understanding how the brain works. So I look forward to hopefully you enjoying this session today. So I've titled this, You're Not Your Emotions, or even just looking at it as mastering your emotions. So when you catch yourself saying to yourself, I'm sad, that is a very personal thing. I'm sad. It's almost like in fact, it is identifying with the sadness. It's really looking at it as you are sad. It's an identification, but that is not correct. The problem with that statement is that when you really personalize it, it becomes you, and you act that way. So you're saying I'm sad. You find out that you actually start getting even more sad. And if you were not sad before, if you were a tiny bit upset, when you say I'm sad, you find yourself actually becoming sad. Really intriguing, isn't it? And that's because you become what you believe you are. If you've been following me, I talk a lot about the brain, the emotional part of the brain. So looking at the emotional part of the brain, one of the key things about our brain is that the prefrontal cortex is where we are able to, our thinking brain. I call it the executive center of the brain, because that's the part of the brain where we think, we can make impulsive decisions, but also we can see into the future. So it's like visualizing. But the main part of our brain, which is deep inside our brain, inside the emotional part of the brain, there are two main organs, the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala is what actually scans the brain, so that when information comes in, it's scanning to understand if this information is a threat, or if the information is a pleasure, a reward, something that is positive, or if it's a negative. If the brain sees it as a threat, what the brain will do, let me put this on to block out the noise coming from outside. So when the brain scans and it picks up that the information is a threat to you, the threat it really depends on how you've wired your brain. So for example, when you say I'm sad, your brain will see that as a threat because it's something that is threatening your peace. What will it do? It will send information to the adrenal gland to secrete the threat hormones. It will secrete cortisol, but also secrete things like adrenaline. And the point of this is to activate that threat response so that you can take the necessary action to keep away or stay away or run away from that perceived threat. So the question then is it a real threat or a perceived threat? When you say I'm sad, that is a threat. And what your body then does is to try to protect you from that sadness. And what it ends up doing is dragging you more into the negative, into the sadness. Because what it will then do is that this is bad. Maybe something has happened. Maybe somebody said something that upset you, something that hurt you. And what you end up finding yourself doing is playing the narrative over and over. And the brain does this to protect you from that threat. So if it's somebody that said something to you, the more you're replaying it, you will stay away from the person, or you freeze, the flight, flight, or freeze response. So you run away from the person, you freeze, or you fight, whichever it is. And the fighting could come as physical fighting, but it could also come as getting defensive. The problem with that, because when the amygdala, that's that emotional part of the brain, when it's activated, it deactivates our thinking brain. So it takes oxygen from our thinking brain, because when you really think about it, when you're under threat, the last thing you want to be doing is kind of staying around to analyze, what is this threat? What kind of threat is it? So basically, if a snake comes in here, I'm not going to start admiring it or start looking, is it big, is it small, is it white, is it black? I am running for my life. And that's the way the threat is. So the brain doesn't discriminate, so basically when you're under threat, it's not the time to start staying around to think or process. So oxygen from here goes to the amygdala, that is the emotional brain, for it to tell the body what you need to do to keep yourself safe. So that whole concept of what is a threat is so important. And that is what emotional intelligence is. It's getting that emotional part of the brain to be intelligent, so it can actually stop controlling your brain, so that your conscious brain controls the emotional part of the brain, so that the emotional part of the brain doesn't run off and do what it thinks it should be doing, while it's not what you really want it to do. So it's being intelligent about that emotional part of the brain. So another way to really look at this whole concept of the way you feel and identifying with it is, someone described it as, you identify, see yourself as the sun. Sun doesn't move, the sun is always there. What can block the sun, so it's a lot of times, is the cloud during the day. The cloud, when it moves over the sun, it will block the sun from getting to your light, from the sun getting to you. But it doesn't mean the sun is not there. So the cloud, if you see the cloud as an emotion, and you as the sun, so you are always there. But the cloud kind of comes and blocks the sunlight. But it doesn't mean that your cloud or that emotion. It just means that that emotion is something that is passing by. And that is really what emotions are. Emotions are information. They give us information about situations, about our environment. Environment could be internal environment, so it could be what we are thinking, but also external environment based on what you're exposed to or what you're experiencing externally. Have you ever felt chained by life's challenges, past traumas, or negative beliefs? This is your time to break free with Mindsight Women's Network, where we dive into a harmonious blend of scripture, emotional intelligence, and neuroscience to dispel limiting beliefs and undergo the divine transformation God has planned for you. This is your chance to not only face life's crossroads, but to transcend them. This isn't just another membership program. It's your key to blending faith, neuroscience, and emotional wisdom. Reclaim your identity, live your purpose, and harness the divine power God holds for you. It's time to step into your light, thrive, and live on purpose. Become part of the Mindsight Women's Network today. When you look at emotions as cloud, remember that once you don't grab hold of them, they pass by. What you need to do is to analyze, do I need this emotion? Is it a positive emotion that I want to hold on to? And if it's not, if it's a negative one, a limiting one, or one that is not enabling you, then let it go. Because when you identify with the emotion, you become that. It becomes you, and that is where you then start having emotional problems or mental problems. The thoughts we have create emotions. So they create the emotions from, like I described, from that emotional part of the brain. And these emotions then enable us carry out an action, which is flight, flight, or freeze, whatever that action is. The action could be the decisions you also make based on the emotion that you're having, that you've connected to the thought process. And then that action, if you keep repeating the thought process that keeps repeating the emotion that will keep repeating the same action you take, then that you can describe that as your behavior pattern or your character, or people might describe it as your personality. So the important thing to remember is that it's the interpretation that you give to the thought that's creating the emotion that then determines what kind of emotion that you have. So another way of looking at it is to see your emotions as something that you wear as clothes. As a cloth that you wear. Now, this is interesting because what emotional clothes are you wearing? What emotional clothes are you actually wearing right now? Are they clothes of excitement? Are they clothes of depression? Are they clothes of sadness? And just, if you just sit with that for a few minutes, what clothes of emotion are you wearing? Bear in mind that tomorrow, a week from now, you will likely be wearing a different cloth. In fact, by tomorrow, you're wearing something different. But having said that, when you do find that when you stay with an emotion for a long period of time, it's actually equating to wearing the same cloth for a period of time. So now, if it's a cloth that I like, I might make quite a few of the same, or buy a few of the same clothes because I like the design or I like the color. Or you might find that I'm always wearing bright colors where somebody else is always wearing dark colors. Actually used to be like that. I used to wear a lot of dark colors before, but then changed to start wearing a lot of bright colors because I realized that actually it does bring out my complexion a lot more. So the cloth you're wearing, I think, is then deciding that this emotion that I'm wearing, that this emotion that I'm carrying, is it beneficial to me? Is it helpful? And if it's not, it's time to take off that emotional cloth and put on one that actually brings out your beauty, that makes you glow, that makes you look good, one that makes you feel good as well, and not emotions that are draining. So just taking your time to think about what, the kind of emotion that you're entertaining, and also the narrative you're giving to it. Are you identifying with it that I am sad, or are you saying I'm feeling sad at the moment? Those are two different things. I'm sad and I'm feeling sad are two different things. I'm feeling is that the cloud that is moving. I am is an identification that that is who you are. And when you say that is who you are, your brain will literally agree with you, and it will give you every reason to remain sad because that is its job. Its job is to do what you tell it to do. So the question is, what are you telling your brain? What information are you giving your brain? Because it literally would do what you want it to do. And I'm going to read this scripture, Romans 5, 1 to 3 in the New King James Version, that says, therefore, having been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom also we have access by faith into his grace in which we stand, and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. And not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance. This is what the Bible is telling us, that to glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance. That is a narrative that God is telling us to take. Now, a lot of times when we're facing tribulations, facing challenges, what you find people doing is identifying with it. It becomes you. I'm not good enough. I'm just so broke. I can't rise in my career, I'm just not good enough, or I'm not quite ready. Taking all these negative narratives, and then you wonder why you remain stuck, because the more you're saying it, the emotion to go with it, you then embrace that emotion, and you find that you're presenting that emotion to people that you're interacting with, and that's what they then believe, because that is what you're doing. You're thinking it and you're acting it out, and people will believe you with, that that's the way you are. So it's important to pay attention to the narrative you're giving situations when going through challenges. If you look at them as that this actually can bring something positive out for me, and it also helps me build up my perseverance, it helps me become resilient, I'm learning from the experience, then you find that in that challenge, in that tribulation, you will see the positive in it. You will actually notice when opportunities come for you, because you're focusing on the fact that it's giving you a positive outcome. So what you will then be drawn to, what your brain will draw you to, are the positives. But when you look at it as you're a victim, you're hopeless, that is exactly what you will see. Things that will be hopeless. In fact, your subconscious will draw you to see everything that draws you to hopelessness. In fact, it could even be what people say. Somebody might say something that, because you're focusing on you being a victim, on things being done to you, you will pick up the things that align with that, whether it's negative or positive. Because the person could say something, but if you're focusing on the positive, you would see what they've said as something to actually help you grow, something that could help you do something different, I suppose, as well. So even if it's in a job situation that, something has happened that has created anxiety or sadness, but you then decide at that moment that things have happened, I have a choice how I look at this. I can either look at this as something negative or positive, and I choose to look at it as something positive to help me grow. Even if the person that said something to me or did something to me intended it negatively, I choose to look at it positively and make my decisions based on that. And those decisions could be for you to improve, take up a skill, or even leave, but you're living in control. You're not living as a victim. Or it could even be something to help you decide, actually, I can move into a different team. I can grow, learn this particular skill, and then move on to do something that I've always wanted to do. The important thing is, in fact, it's limitless what you can do with it, what you can also achieve with it. But it all comes down to how you view that narrative, the interpretation you give the narrative. So if you focus your attention on what you believe somebody has done to you, we're talking about sadness. If you focus on the negative, that could actually create things like resentment as well. It can create a lot of frustration. And then the sad the sad part of that is that you find that you're wasting so much time and energy on things that are not productive, on the negatives, on the anxiety, on the worry, on you not being able to have a voice. And also you now wasting so much time feeling that you don't have much worth, or you're not that competent, while the opposite is the truth. But it's all because of the narrative that you give it. So if you disengage your thoughts of resentment and simply focus on a positive narrative from what has happened, you find that you empower yourself to then go on and achieve so much more. And you really look at it, if you read the autobiographies of people who've been really successful, you find that a lot of things, negative things that happen to them, they don't take it personally. they literally don't take it personally. So it's almost like water off a duck's back. But it's when you start personalizing things that it keeps you stuck or keeps you away from really achieving your full potential, or really achieving the purpose that God has ordained for you. And it's so unfortunate because the Bible says that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. That means that our ability and capability is limitless. So when you find that you're holding yourself back from doing what you know you really want to do, that's the time to start asking the questions. What is holding me back? What am I thinking? What are the emotions that are keeping me bound? So that you can start changing the narrative for those. So, in itself, an event or a thought has no power to alter your emotional state. So, the thought has no power, but it's the interpretation you give the thought that creates the emotion. So, and that is why two people can be in the same situation but experience it differently because of the interpretation that they've given it. So, while one person will see a problem and blame circumstances or blame people, the other person will see an opportunity and embrace it. If you find that you're the person that is always complaining about what people are doing or what people have done, it's time to stop, and just look at the situation, change the narrative to make it positive for yourself. Because until you do that, you will find that the actions you're taking are contrary to what you actually want. They are actually in line with what you're saying. So it's almost like you want something, but you're saying a different thing, but expect a different result. It's so important to just pay attention to your thoughts. And I've got a few questions that I want you to just think about. Do you think everything happens for a reason and embrace it? Or do you play the victim? So when things happen, what interpretation do you give it? Do you find that you complain, or you actually look at it as, almost like giving a reason of what you can benefit from it? And it might be something that isn't great, but within that, it's looking for the positive and using that to your benefit. It really comes back to, what do I want? I heard somebody giving a talk, and he says that when there's a storm, your focus should be, because you've got to go through the storm, and when you get to the eye of the storm, it's almost like that is the part you can just relax a bit before moving again. So it's a case of keep moving. Keep moving. What do I need to keep going? What do I need? So even if things are battering you from all corners, just stay focused on where you're going. And that is what then creates the narrative you want. This is where I'm going. This is what I want to do. That then creates the emotion of attentiveness, emotion of determination that keeps you going. And that is what motivation really is about. Another question I have is, do you believe setbacks are temporary and are milestones that can lead you to succeed? Or do you give up when you encounter your first major setback? And I remember when I had to close my business 17 years ago, honestly, I really made myself a victim of that situation. I was complaining about everything and the way things happened, the way my stylist was behaving. I really was complaining about a lot. But it was when I learned emotional intelligence a few years after that I realized that no, what I was doing was giving my power away to everyone else. And what I needed to do was take the power back. And I sat down to think about the whole experience. What did I learn from it? What will I do differently next time? And that was just so empowering for me, because it then helped me to come out of that state of depression that I was in. It helped me to then refocus and decide and determine what I wanted to do. Because you find a lot of times when you're facing challenges at work, or you've been made redundant. What a lot of people do is just jump in and into the next thing that comes along without stopping to think what you really want. And when you do that, a few months in, you're so unhappy, and then you go, oh, I've made a mistake. It wasn't the right thing. It wasn't the right organization. It wasn't the right job. Just don't give your power away. When something happens, don't let it be that something has, is being done to you. Look at the situation and go, okay, so what can I do with this situation? What can I do next? What do I want to do? Bring it back to that. The other question is, do you try to change things that cannot be changed, or do you accept them? So this is an important one. So when things happen, do you try to change them, or do you accept them? Do you believe you're here for a reason, or do you wander through life without any clear purpose? There's something about our brain. The brain doesn't like change. Our brain doesn't like uncertainty. So when you're going through change, your brain would literally do everything, give you every reason why you shouldn't. Unless you've wired your brain, shelling that dopamine area, that you'd really thrive on change. But if not, you find that the brain doesn't really like change. And even with the dopamine, there are situations, especially people that have wired their frontal part of the brain more. There are certain situations that even change, you might resist to an extent. Not so much like other, like people who've wired different, or initially the estrogen part of the brain and the serotonin part. A lot of times you find that they resist change completely. So depending on how you've wired your brain, you'll find that when it comes to change or something different, your brain might resist. So it's just paying attention to that, and then finding out why it's resisting, and then so that you can change the narrative. And that's the whole concept of rewiring the brain. Why are you carrying out the change? Why is the change important? Why is the change happening? This also applies when you're a leader leading others. You don't just come and tell people we're getting on this new system, or we're leaving this system we're on and moving on to another one. What you will find is that a lot of people will resist, because their brain goes into, no, we're not doing, what's the point of changing? This works, so what's the point? If you don't get people to understand the reason why, and ensure that they take that reason, that why, so that it aligns with them, why does it matter to them? If you don't help them achieve that, you will find a lot of pushback. As an individual, same thing. Not all leaders are great in emotional intelligence. So it's for you to find out why the change, is going to benefit you, how it aligns with what you want to do. Find the positive in it. How can you make it work for you? And that will help you embrace the change, so that you don't get overwhelmed, you don't get stressed, you don't get anxious, because it's all those negatives that create the anxious worry and all that. And in every situation, it's remembering there's a solution somewhere. There's a solution. So, but if you just keep focusing on what's going wrong, that emotion gets strong, because the negative emotion that we have is always stronger than the positive. And the reason why is that when you're under threat, that emotion has to be stronger to keep you away. So to either make you run away or fight for your life. And that is why threat responses are so much stronger, and they last longer. The emotion of threat, negative emotions last longer. That's why somebody could be so nice to you for years, but the moment they do one thing different or negative, that's all you remember. You forget how nice they were to you for 20 years. All you focus on is the thing that they've done that has disappointed you or did not meet your expectation. And that's what your brain will keep replaying to keep you safe. It has to keep replaying that negative to remind you that this person, what this person did, or this person is a danger, what they've done is a threat to you. So, but you need to take control of your brain, take control of your emotions, and by changing the narrative to what you want it to be. Somebody might have disappointed you. Okay, if that's the way they are, then I'm going to adapt or adjust the way I relate to them. And that's so important. Other question I have is, do you believe problems are bad and should be avoided, or do you believe they are necessary part of life? You see, because if you believe problems are bad, when challenges come, your brain will automatically make you run away from that problem or freeze. So you find that in situations you might not even speak, you might go into meetings and not say anything, or you might meet somebody and not say anything for fear of being judged or fear of being rejected. So, if there's a problem, you might find, especially if you've wired your brain to feel that problems are bad, you might then find that you keep repeating the same mistake over and over because you've not given your brain the opportunity to look for solution. Because you've already wired it into your brain that problems are bad. And it's so common. I have so many managers that tell me, I don't know what's wrong with this, my member of staff. I keep correcting them, but they keep making the same mistake over and over. That's a wiring problem, definitely. So it's important to understand how you interpret situations, the narrative you give things, because that is what creates emotions, and emotions are just information. So, the emotions you give things will create the actions that you take, will create the decisions that you make, will then determine how you communicate with people, how you form relationships. What kind of relationships do you form as well? Are they positive? Are they negative? Where do you hang out? Who do you hang out with? Your emotions will take you towards what you've wired into your brain or what is already wired in your brain. So the great news about emotional intelligence is that you can do something about it. Emotional intelligence is divided into two main parts. It's the intrapersonal and the interpersonal. The intrapersonal is you. So that is your self-awareness. That is you paying attention to your thoughts, paying attention to your emotions, and then using that to self-motivate yourself. The interpersonal is how you relate with other people, how you communicate with other people, how empathetic you are. So that is that social relationship, how you interrelate, communicate with other people. How are you able to persuade people to see things from your point of view? Do you do it as being persuasive, or do you do it in a very manipulative way? All this will determine your level of emotional intelligence. So I hope this has given you a flavor, an idea of what's emotional intelligence and how to master your emotions with emotional intelligence. The key thing is being intelligent about that emotional part of your brain, especially the amygdala. And I didn't really touch much on hippocampus today, which is where a lot of the memory is stored. And what the amygdala does is that it checks there into the hippocampus to determine how is this information stored, what emotion is attached to it for you to make the decision whether it's a threat or a reward. So I hope this has helped you a lot. If you do have questions or comments, put them down in the comment section, whether on YouTube or whether in the community space in the Mindsight Women's Network. And I look forward to seeing you next week when I come back again with another session. And please subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any episode and you also get a notification, but also click on that like button and comment and share this video as well so that other people can learn from it, because it's understanding emotions is so powerful, so rewarding, and it will truly transform your life. It's really, really powerful. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.